Welcome back to Double Helix, where we unravel the science of human connection. I'm Mark Merritt, and today's episode is one that you won't want to miss. We're joined by Dr. Paul Jenkins, a positivity psychologist with over 30 years experience, who spent his career helping people move from just surviving to truly thriving. In our conversation, Dr. Jenkins shares why positivity is more than just a buzzword and introduces his powerful model for mastering our own mindset. You'll discover the concept of 7 key relationships that shape every aspect of our lives and learn why our connections matter more than we think. He also breaks down the difference between 2 kinds of money and how understanding that difference can transform not just our finances, but our closest relationships. As you listen, make sure you listen for these 3 key takeaways. The first one is the role of awareness in taking charge of our thoughts and relationships. The second one is the 7 key relationships framework that I mentioned a moment ago, and why prioritizing them creates a foundation for personal and professional success. And then lastly, the 9 core principles Dr. Jenkins teaches for strengthening our connections and improving our mental and emotional health. Let's dive in. Welcome to Double Helix once again, where we unravel the science of connections. And we are very excited today to have Dr. Paul Jenkins with us. I'm going to call you Paul because I've known you so long.
That works.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you here. Paul is, introduce yourself a little bit exactly what you do on your day-to-day for your practice.
I am a positivity psychologist. And maybe that's not even a thing. I totally made it up when I started doing it because positive psychology is something that has really gained a lot of popularity in more recent years. Back when I went to shrink school, it wasn't an option. It was traditional psychotherapy, and I had a traditional psychotherapy practice for a good 15 years or so. And then the last part of my career, another 15 years or so, I've gone over to the positive psychology side, which is just a whole lot of fun. And to understand that, Mark, if you look at your mental health on a spectrum or a continuum, clear over on the left end is the sick end. So that's where we've got diagnosis, pathology, treatment, all those fun things. I'm really more passionate and interested in the other end of the spectrum. And to understand that, if we go to the middle first, that's health, meaning not sick, right? So you could be sick in bed with a fever, throwing up. There comes a time you can get out of bed and you're not sick. That's in the middle of the spectrum. But it doesn't mean you're truly fit, thriving, prospering. That's over here on the other end of it.
Right.
And so I've basically moved my practice from here, where I was for the first half of my career, over to the positive end of that spectrum. And there's some overlap in the middle. Everybody's got issues. Have you noticed?
Me.
Yeah. We all have issues. Welcome to the planet. That's how we roll.
Right.
But
exactly.
it doesn't necessarily mean that you're sick. It might just mean that you're human. And so we take principles that I've developed through my practice. I say we because I'm training and certifying coaches now too to apply these principles. And we apply those to wherever you are on the spectrum so that we can get you over to this other end where a whole lot of fun things happen. So that's the quick version, I guess. I mean,
I'm hoping we can dive into a little more detail as we talk today, but that's great.
Sure.
So, I mean, everyone, I actually met Paul, I think it was through the National Speakers Association is where we first met.
Right.
And if you couldn't tell, there's several people that I've actually met over the years to that organization, which is a great, great organization. And then years ago, what was it? 15 years ago, I think it was on your podcast. I don't know I don't remember when it was.
You were a guest on my podcast, something about falling 40 feet out of a tree or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some story you totally made up, and you brought the wheelchair along just to add emphasis.
It's a great prop. It was a great prop, right?
Well, actually, yeah, you're not wrong about that. But it's also a compelling invitation, I think, for us to rethink some of what we have concluded about our own lives, about the other places where we might be getting stuck. And I remember having that conversation with you, Mark, and we've had several interactions
right
over the years. I remember you brought me in to speak for a client at one point, and so we've had our paths cross here and there. And the principles, though, when we had that conversation, I'm still, I should have gone and looked up the archive link for that. And we can still find it. If you look up Mark Merritt at Live on Purpose Radio, you'll find it. It's there in the archive
somewhere back in there. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember that conversation.
Yeah. And it was always, for those of you that, if you've not tuned in before to Double Helix, if you check out last week's episode, we actually have somebody interviewing me going through the details of the accident. And so that particular individual's name's Joel Stedman, came forward and said, you need to be interviewed. Everybody needs to know your story. And so it was a little bit awkward, but we kind of got rolling well with it. And so if you're interested in that part, yes, I did fall 40 feet. It's nothing that I would recommend. You don't wake up on a Saturday morning and think I'm going to go try something new.
Right. It's life-changing.
And so yeah, it was one of those things that, I appreciated the opportunity to have been on your podcast years ago, kind of help with that focus. I joke around a lot about, the wheelchair. I used to always joke it was a prop. It was easy because from a wheelchair standpoint, if there's somebody that's walking down the street, you automatically look at that person and go, they have some problems. And that's a simple thing to go, there's issues there. But so often we walk down the street and someone else walking down the street, they have as many problems or more than someone that might maybe visually disabled, that they're struggling with and they're wrestling with. And so that's why I was said the wheelchair was a great, in the sense, while I was in the wheelchair for those years, was a great conversation starter. However, it was not, it just, there was so much more to it to reach those connections and having those conversations with individuals to see beyond that.
Right. I think one of the reasons it's so compelling, stories like yours, Mark, I actually was doing an interview on my show just 2 hours ago with Sydney Smith. I don't know if you know Sydney. He's part of our NSA chapter as well. He's new. He just came in, lives out in the Uinta Basin in Utah, and he is a double amputee. So both of his feet have been cut off. We called the episode Fear Defeated.
Nice.
We just took the feet out of it.
Yeah.
And I told Sydney while we were chatting on the mic that the reason people resonate with that is not because everybody else can relate. Oh yeah, my feet have been cut off too. Very few people are double amputees. And I told Sydney the reason that is so compelling is because this is our story with your details.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I think Brad Barton first introduced me to that phrase, that this is our story, my details, but beyond the details, the principles are all exactly the same. And whether you have feet or not, whether you've fallen 40 feet or not, whether you've been through a bankruptcy or not, whatever your details are, that just sets the context, but the underlying principles are all the same. I think they're universal.
So you mentioned the underlying principles. So explain what you see as those underlying principles that are the similarities, because you described obviously an amputee and then, falling 40 feet or bankruptcy or whatever the issue is. What are you
Yeah.
seeing as the underlying principles that those all tie together?
Yes. And this is where I get really passionate, because I don't think any of this is magic or luck. I think there are, in fact, underlying principles that determine all of life's outcomes. That's a bold statement, but I really believe that it's true. It's like gravity, which you have some very personal experiences with, and it's
We don't get
always
along.
on. And you never get up in the morning and think, okay, I wonder if gravity's on today.
Right.
It is. It is going to pull on you all day long. And gravity's not a bad thing. It's just a principle that we need to understand. And then we can operate our life in accordance with that and hopefully make it less likely that we'll fall 40 feet. But things happen too. So,
Right.
So what are the principles? For me, it comes down to the proper operation of the equipment of our own mind, and to put that in a context. Okay, so the proper operation of the equipment, I call the principle positivity. And Mark, I'm sharing a little card here on the screen with this.
Mm-hmm.
This is my positivity model that I teach. It's the foundation of all of our coaching programs and the training and the keynotes and everything that I do, leadership, sales. It all ties in. And it's not the purpose of today's conversation to get deep into the model, but I've prepared a free copy of my mini book for anybody who's watching or listening today. You can just go to drpauljenkins.com/double helix, which is the name of this show.
Right.
And I'll give you a free digital download of that, because I want you to be able to have that tool. But I consider this to be a foundational principle of psychology, because what it does is it shows you how the gravity of your brain operates. And once you are aware, awareness precedes choice.
Right.
And until you see it as a choice, it's not. Either you drive your thoughts or your thoughts drive you. And the most common error that I see people making is that they think their circumstances are what's important, and they're not. And that's why I said, whether you're a double amputee or you fell 40 feet or you went through a bankruptcy or a divorce, that's simply the weather report. The underlying principles and how to operate the equipment of our own mind are consistent across all of those contexts. So that's the first principle that comes to mind for me. But then I said it's all in a context, which I define as the 7 key relationships. And I know you're really passionate about connection,
Yes.
Mark. And this is where that becomes very relevant, because everything that we're doing is in the context of our 7 key relationships. And so once we learn to operate the equipment, we become aware of how our brain operates. It puts us back in a position of choice. And then all of the purpose and meaning and power comes in the context of our 7 key relationships.
And what are those 7 key relationships that you've identified?
Oh, that's not something everybody knows. Yeah, I just pop it off
Okay,
and the 7 keys.
Let me, okay, I'm sorry. Let me raise my hand. I don't know what they are.
Oh, Mark? Yeah. And I sometimes introduce it that way just to trigger the question, wait, what are the 7 keys? Because you're going to notice them. In fact, my job is to illuminate the obvious. Think about that. I get paid to tell people things they already know. But there's obvious things that are completely unnoticed. until they're called to your attention. And a lot of psychology is in that realm, like the feeling of your shirt. Can you feel it?
Mm-hmm.
Now.
Oh, sorry.
Now,
You actually want me to feel it. Okay.
well, I mean, you can feel it on your body, right?
Uh-huh.
Which you could feel before too, but you didn't notice it till I called it to your attention. Because our brain just tunes that out, right? Or the fact that we're speaking English. Did you notice?
That's right.
Well, now it's obvious, but it's unnoticed until it's called to your attention. That's the space that I operate in. It's my job to illuminate the obvious, to call to your attention things that are on autopilot. And you do it all the time. Okay. You've already forgotten about your shirt. Oh, there it is again. And you can immediately feel it again. Do you see that? Or your shoes. Oh, there they are. Okay. So that wouldn't have worked with Sydney. He doesn't have feet, but
He has pants.
yeah, there you go. So this is one of those obvious but unnoticed things. And as I call this to your attention, just notice that you're operating in the context of these 7 key relationships. So number 1, and I put these in order, okay?
Okay.
This disclaimer, this is totally my opinion. All right? There's a difference between fact and opinion. This is my opinion, which I've earned
Dr. Jenkins' opinion.
through 30 years of clinical practice, okay? I've done I did yuck work for 13 years. I did child custody evaluations for the court.
Oh.
Yeah, bitter, angry divorcing people can't figure out how to share their kids.
That's yuck work. Yeah.
And so I've earned my opinion about the order of these key relationships. And I've found if we keep them in order, things go much, much better than if we get any of them out of order. Okay, so that's my disclaimer.
Okay.
All right, number 1, your creator. Your relationship with your creator. And I am not here as your spiritual guide or your rabbi or your priest. I'm acknowledging that humans need to come to terms somehow with their source. And this is something that we've seen throughout history. So whatever it is for you, that's relationship number 1. Number 2, yourself. And some people skip this one. They forget that it's even a relationship.
But it is.
Oh, yes. And it affects all of the others too. I remember somebody asking me once, hey, if I treated you the way you treat you, would we still be friends? And so just notice you've got some relationship with yourself. And that's a complicated one. It's one that I spent a lot of my career helping people with. Number 3 is your spouse. If you are married or in a committed relationship.
Right.
Now, if one of these is missing, then we just collapse the list and whoever's next on the list becomes that level of priority.
Moves up the next step. Yeah.
Yeah, because not everybody is in a committed or marital relationship. But if you are, that one's next. After spouse is children. And again, you may or may not have children. But if you do, they're next on the list. After children is extended family. And this includes brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts and cousins and even your parents. Would be at that level. Some people put close friends in the same category as extended family. You get to decide how that works for you.
Right.
So extended family, now we're up to 5, okay? And I ran out of fingers, so I have to jump over to the other hand for the other 2, which is handy. And I'll show you why in just a minute. But when we jump over to the other hand, number 6 is other people. So either people are on your first hand in your family, or they're not, and they're over here. Okay, so this includes clients and customers. It includes people in your community, people at your church or synagogue, people who belong to the same political party as you, people who belong to the wrong political party. because people get a right-wrong attitude about that.
Right.
Starving children in Africa. Okay, they all make the list. They're not as important as your family to you. I'm not saying they're not important. They made the list.
Right.
Okay, so that's other people. And then finally is your relationship with things, including money and property, stuff. And we call that relationship stewardship, is one of the words that you'll hear. And the reason I think it's handy that they're on two hands is because of something that my financial advisor taught me years ago. He said, Paul, there are two kinds of people in this world, and I'm interested. I'm a psychologist, right? And there are two kinds of money. And then he went on to explain the first kind of people are those that are close to you, okay? The people on the first hand. So your spouse, your kids, your family, your extended family, that's all hand number one, okay? And then everybody else is the second kind of people. And then he talked about two kinds of money. And this was so interesting to me, Mark, because I'd never really thought about it. He said, the first kind of money is the kind that is immediately valuable to you.
Okay.
And I'm like, what? Like what? What do you mean? And he and I both like to play basketball a little bit. And when you pull up from the 3-point arc, okay, a gentle push, a mild arc, and the cowhide globe hits home.
Right.
Swish. And what do people say? Money. Right? Because of the feeling that you get when you hit a 3-point shot, or when you sink that chip shot out on the golf course, or when your daughter runs up to you after a long day at work and wraps her arms around you. Daddy, money. Okay? The second kind of money is the kind you have to trade for something that you value. And that's how we usually think about money. So I've got an example of that right here. It's a $10 bill, US currency. This is useless, except to trade it for something.
Right. It's just a piece of paper otherwise.
What would I use it for? Unless
Right.
I run out of toilet paper, this doesn't have any immediate use to me. So that's the second kind of money. You trade the first kind of money with the first kind of people. You trade the second kind of money with the second kind of people.
Interesting. I've never thought of it that way.
But it makes sense. And when you look at those 7 key relationships, the 5 on the first hand are the ones that are the most important to you. And when you create value for them, you think about it, Mark, when you create value for your family, nobody gets a bill, right? You don't go kiss your wife and, leave her a nickel. That would be weird. Just weird. And
that would be odd.
Awkward.
It definitely would.
It's immediately valuable. In fact, the second kind of money we trade with the second kind of people. So you go down to the grocery store and you fill up your cart with groceries and you go hug the grocer and say thank you, give him a little kiss on the cheek. No, you give him a $10 bill, $100, a couple of hundreds.
Depends on where you're going.
Depends on how full your cart was.
That's right.
But you're going to give them the second kind of money.
Mhm.
Why? Because they don't want a hug from you. They want to take that money, and what are they going to do with it? They're going to go trade it with somebody else.
Yep.
So that they can create experiences with the first kind of people. So and I don't know how we got clear down that path, Mark.
No, I asked you about the 7 relationships.
The 7 key relationships, right?
Yeah.
So when you understand that context,
when you went into that, what really came to my mind, and was Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits. When you divided those out, even those first 7 habits are divided as into personal and then the world around us. Very similar, a little bit different division, but very similar thought process as well. Yours gets a little bit more detailed in that sense of the 5 to the 2, right? But that's what came to my mind was like, oh, this is a familiar concept, but I love the way you've laid it out.
Mm. I think one of the reasons that this became so important to me is because I work with a lot of people who come to me. They're drawn to me because they want to do the kind of work that I do. My whole job is helping people to save and enrich their 7 key relationships. And it's awesome. It is so awesome to watch somebody save their marriage, or to have someone completely enrich the relationship that they have with their teenager, or to really step up and serve people better. And they feel called to really help people. But they're used to doing that exchange with the people that are closest to them. And if they want to make a business out of it, like a life coach, for example, they
Right.
just want to help people out of the goodness of
Mhm.
their heart, right?
Right.
Nobody becomes a therapist because they're going to make a whole bunch of money doing it. They do it out of the goodness of their heart. They really want to help people. It's a calling, really. And I
Mhm.
tell them, look, if you feel called to do this, then you can't ignore it. You're going to have to do it. And either you'll do it as a service project, in which case don't quit your day job, or you find an economic engine for the mission. And the economic engine is over here on the second hand, because we trade the second kind of money, property, with the second kind of people who aren't in our intimate circles. And that's called a business model. So economics is the difference between the two hands. But we're still creating value across all 7 of our key relationships. That's jumping almost into a master class, though, Mark. Maybe that's not what you were looking for today.
No, I think that's great. I think it's really important to have that. The way you've laid that out, I think, is really important to have that visual between those two things. I'd never thought about 2 different types of money or those things, and I love how you tied that all together. So, but that brings me to a question of one of the questions that I sent over to you. How do you approach helping individuals and groups recognize the impact of their connections on their health, and what tools or exercises do you use to help people to start better identifying with those 7 key relationships? How do you help them become become a habit?
I think we already started to address this when I said awareness. Awareness precedes choice.
Right.
And until you see it as a choice, it's not. You just roll with whatever your programming is. So I think that's a really key step, is that we raise our awareness of our connectedness. That I think it's an illusion to think that we're individuals. Now, that might sound weird, but when you think about it in terms of, like, you look up in the foothills here in the beautiful state of Utah, and there are aspen groves up there in the hills, and they look like individual trees. But we know from the people who study, the arborists and people who know the trees, that's all one organism. And each tree is a different manifestation of that same organism.
Right. And I think that goes along the way with people as well. I remember a friend of mine years ago that went through and had gone back to get their master's degree. And I remember in the end of that thinking, look, I did this all myself. Look I did it on my own. And they were all independent. And I remember having the conversation going, okay, but wait a second. You know, this person all had an impact and helped you through that process. And this person, and we just started having that conversation and realizing that, no, don't discount what you have accomplished, but make certain that you realize that, lift your eyes and say, there is so much more interaction and those relationships that help support you through that process. And that was an interesting conversation, because that person was basically on walking across the stage going, I did this by myself. It's like, not quite.
Well, and another example of exactly the same thing, Mark, happened right here in this office, right behind where we're sitting here today. A man who had fought his wife about hiring a shrink for I don't know, probably a couple of years. And it got to a point where his depression was just kicking his butt and affecting everyone else around him. This is back when I had my traditional clinical practice.
Mm-hmm.
And he finally came in and he was all defeated. Just like, well, thank you. I'm happy to be here too.
Thanks for
right?
coming in.
It's like, I hate that I had to come see. Why? Because I just thought that somehow I could do this myself. Like there's some virtue in doing it himself. And I said, well, help me understand that. And it was a similar thing to what you pointed out, Mark. I said, is yourself, like, what do you do yourself? Anything? He's like, well, yeah, a lot of things. I said, like, getting dressed this morning. Did you do that by yourself? He's like, of course I did. Right. I've got friends who have people dress them in the morning.
Yeah. I mean,
you and I know, and you've been in that.
We know some of them. Yes.
It's just, so I said, like getting dressed in the morning. He says, yes, of course I did. Oh, really? Using what? Clothing that you made from fibers that you harvested? Right. I mean, we got down to the nitty gritty.
Did you plant the seed?
Do you realize how many hundreds of people helped you get dressed this morning? Can you sign your own name? Well, yeah, I can do that. Using what? A pencil that you created? From wood that you harvested? From a tree that you grew?
And who taught you how to sign it?
And right. Yeah, I mean, so when you start looking at our very connected nature, and we are social beings.
Right.
And the very fact that you can go to the store and buy groceries reveals your interdependence with everyone else, because the grocery store can't exist unless you go do what you do and get some of that second kind of money, because guess what the grocery store needs to keep in operation. So the connectedness, that's why I said I think individuality, although we honor individuals and differences,
right,
I think there's something illusory about that. And if you really want a mind-blowing experience, I did this. I picked up Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief.
Okay. I'm making a note right now.
Be ready for a heady adventure. Okay. He knows his stuff. And he gets kind of scientific about it, but there's also a faith element in this. He's a cellular biologist, Mark. And here's an interesting example of what he shared. I don't know if I'm going to fairly capture it, but I think it's fun for our conversation to maybe just open up a possibility here. And he talks about the cells of your body, because when your body started, it was when two people love each other, okay, we don't need to go into, there's two cells from different people who come together, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that forms a new organism. And that organism starts to divide. So the cell becomes 2 cells, and then it becomes 4 cells, and then it becomes, you remember your biology classes?
Yes, I do.
Every one of these cells is genetically identical.
Mm-hmm.
How does one of those cells know to become the tip of your nose?
This is a conversation I remember having back in college. When I first went to school, I was exercise sports science. And and the physiology professor, we had this specific conversation where all of a sudden a switch gets flipped in some cell, and I was like, I'm the eyeball, or I'm a liver. Right. It was, you just, okay, wait a second. What happened? And we don't know.
It has exactly the same genes as the cell that became your toenail.
Exactly.
So what the heck, right? There's this diversification. And what Bruce points out in his book is that each cell receives a message, and that implies a messenger. And when you start thinking about it, it's like, wait a minute, hold on. And we see this in the world all around us. You see a flock of birds who will all shift and turn at exactly the same time as they're flying in the air. spore molds are some of the most interesting little creatures that form structures together. And how do we do this? So as humans, yes, we're all individual manifestations of whatever we're thinking of as humanity. And we have our job, our specialized job to do on the planet and amongst our fellow human beings. And when you look at your body, it's a good example. You don't want every cell in your body to be a nose cell. That you would be a big nose, and that's it. So I need some of my cells to become a toenail. I need some of them to be a heart. Right. And those are very, very different jobs that genetically identical cells that all started in the same place have to somehow become who they are designed to be. And it only makes sense in the context of connection with all the others. So if we extrapolate that up to a macro level and we're looking at us as humans, what does that mean? I mean, you put a little nickel in me, Mark, and I can start philosophizing, okay?
Well, Paul, this is why I said I want Paul on the podcast because, I recognize that, you have a wealth of knowledge and stuff. So yeah, put a nickel in, I'm all for it. So let me ask you this. As important as, all of our interconnectedness, whether it's with you and I, even just like right now, or face to face, or out in the woods, or on the prairies, whatever it is, we're connected with everything around us. But with those individuals that we have, whether it's on the one hand or the other, right? With that, can you give us some practical strategies on strengthening those connections? Let's just talk first of all about that one hand, that first five, right, of those key relationships. What are some practical strategies that we can use to help strengthen those connections, and that will also support our mental and emotional health?
That's an easy answer for me. It's
great.
Because it's not the first time I've asked that question.
Apparently, I spent a lot longer writing that question than you're going to take answering it.
Well, I don't know, unless you count the 30 years of clinical practice.
True. Okay, that's that.
It boils down to basic principles. And there are 9 of them that I have found are extremely powerful, and I would even venture guaranteed to save and enrich our 7 key relationships. Okay. And they apply across all 7. They are most important on the first hand with our family and our spouse and ourselves. And so those 9 principles are the ones that I like to teach in my trainings. And the first one I already shared with you. It's called positivity.
Yeah.
And that's what the mini book is all about. Remember, if you're listening, I promised you one of these. And we can put it in the show notes and stuff too. But just go to drpauljenkins.com, spell it with a DR, and then / double helix, all one word. And you can get a copy of that. And you'll see what I'm talking about. Because you know what? It's so annoying when people throw around the word positivity as if they know what it means. Because a lot of people on the planet, and you've probably heard of toxic positivity in social media or whatever, and they think it's just ignoring the pain and pretending everything's peachy. No, when I say positivity, I mean 2 specific processes that your brain is always doing. I call them evaluation and creation. And becoming aware of how your mind is processing your experience. Awareness precedes choice, because that puts you back in a position of, if this is what my brain is doing, can I steer that? Can I guide that a different direction? And either you drive your thoughts or your thoughts drive you.
Something's going to drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm not here to tell people how to think. I don't have that kind of authority. But I do want them to see that they are thinking, and once they're aware of it, then they're in a position of choice. That changes the game. on
Yeah.
everything. You can see how that's so essential.
Yeah.
And then
I do.
there's
I do.
8 other principles that we work on in our trainings and our coaching programs.
So what I will do is I'd like to provide a link to that for our listeners so that they can go and check out the programs that you have. I'd love to say, Paul, tell us all of it, but right. I mean, that's not very fair. Right. And so, but I'd like to provide a link to have someone go to you and to be able to see, find out what are those other 8 things, right?
I'm happy to give you a quick, just without describing any of them, just the list.
Okay.
Positivity is first. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then following that, values. That's the why. That's the purpose behind everything that we do. And that's a core principle in saving and enriching our key relationships. Next, humility. That's giving up your need to be right in exchange for being open. One of my colleagues wrote a book, You Can Be Right or You Can Be Married. I love his title because there's some truth to that, right? The next one is forgiveness, which a lot of people misunderstand. I define that as giving up our demand for a better past. And then following that are respect, love, compassion, work, and wholesome recreation. Because if we're not having fun, we're doing it wrong.
Right.
Did I get all 9?
I believe so. I didn't count them, but I was more enthralled as you're going through those, to be honest with you, more than once going, oh, okay, I need to be better. I need to focus on this piece. I was identifying those areas that I can do because, right. On that one hand, I can go, yeah, I could be better. And so thank you for sharing those. That's where my brain was going, is how can I apply those things for me? Right.
Yes. This is tactical positivity. Mm-hmm. It's not just a trite, fluffy, just think positive. Let's get busy applying principles that have actually been proven to work. And I have a little warning, because now that I've shared the 9 principles with you, these are like power tools. Okay. And power tools are awesome. They get the job done quickly, and they're extremely dangerous.
Right.
As all power tools are. You have to use them according to safety guidelines. So here's the safety guidelines for the 9 principles. They are for personal use only. Got it?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Years ago, when I had you come out and do a speaking gig, do a training, if you remember, with the company I was running. Right. I remember it was before you came out, I presented the book by the Arbinger Institute, Leadership and Self-Deception.
Yes.
Which is a great book. I love that book, right? Yes. It's a great book. And I remember taking it to some of the people in the company, and how many of them came and said, do you think I need this? Or, instead of saying they were assuming I was saying,
what are you saying, Mark?
Yeah, exactly. And it was funny because one of them, I said, no, I read this and I need this. And I thought I would share. And then it was really interesting because one of the people said, I gave it to my husband, and he said, what are you saying about me? It was just this whole process. And you're right. It's more meant at those things. I totally agree with you. It's more meant as, this is for me. It's not for me to think, oh, I know somebody who really needs this.
Well, I've done a lot of couples coaching and counseling and even therapy in the past. And to put this in the context of a marriage, for example, and when I share with these couples that there are 9 principles that are guaranteed to save and enrich your marriage. And I mean, getting a guarantee from a shrink might be about like getting one from a used car salesman, but these have been shown through research and clinical experience to actually have the effects that we're hoping to accomplish. And so I'll give them the 9 principles, and I'll say, okay, your first challenge, go home and memorize these. And before I started sharing the safety guidelines, people would go home, they'd memorize the 9 principles and come back a week later worse, not better. Because what did they do?
I can so see that.
They're like, oh, I see what's going on. You need to be more forgiving. You need to be, and they start beating each other up with these 9 principles. These are power tools. Be careful with these. Okay.
That's great advice there. Yes.
The only safe way to use these is to look at whatever your relationship is, and it can be across any of those 7 that we talked about, and to ask yourself, okay, which of these 9 principles can I apply to make this a little better? And I guarantee you're going to find several. Like when you were listening, Mark, you were like, oh yeah, I could do better at that. I could do. And you're going to find 5 or 6 of those that your spouse could do better, because psychologically it's like, okay, I'm doing my part, but things would sure be a lot better if they would just shape up a little. And I'm even going to give you that because it's true. It is true. Things would be better if your spouse would shape up, but it's not useful. Because as soon as you identify one of these 9 principles that someone else could do better, what does it look like, sound like, feel like to them? Criticism.
Yep.
Right? And John Gottman pointed out, he's a big researcher in relationships. He pointed out that criticism is the first of 4, he called it the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. And we're off to the races because people get defensive as soon as you criticize them. And even if you don't intend it as criticism, it works really well to accomplish that.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, you can tell we could have fun with that, Mark.
Yeah, Paul, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you taking time today. I kind of want to wrap up a little bit.
Yeah.
I normally would say, can you give us 2 or 3 pointers? But you've given, let's see, 7, 9, 4. Let's add those up, right? I mean, you've done more than that.
It's probably overkill. So, yeah.
No, and I love it. I love it. So,
well, you know what though, Mark? This is a journey. It's not a destination. It's like, give me a checklist, right? Well, you're always going to have something to work on.
Right.
Which is really great news for those of us who are coaching. And it keeps my coaches receiving paychecks from me because I think coaches need coaches. We are all connected. You know, that's why I love that underlying theme of what we're talking about here in the double helix and how we are just entwined. And it's the way that it should be. So I hope that as you're listening to this, you're not taking it as, oh crap, I'm so far from where No, you're right on schedule. And whatever's next is next.
When you and I were kids, they had a Halloween, not a Christmas cartoon. Remember the old claymation stuff that they had, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? But remember, there was the story about Kris Kringle.
Where you're going. Yeah.
Right. And there was the winter guy. I can't remember his type, but he always
the winter warlock.
The winter warlock, and it was always put one foot in front of the other. And it's just these, or you can go to what about Bob? Baby steps.
Baby steps.
Right.
Yeah, I'm singing it in my head of put one foot in front of the other.
So, exactly. And so, but I think it's really, really important for our listeners to realize that it is not, it's just a matter of being willing to see your progress of where you've been. Dr. Benjamin Hardy wrote a great book, A Gap to the Gain, which is a fantastic book. And how many times I've had to look back and go, okay, I may not be as far as I think I should be, but where have I been and what's my progress like? And I think that's what a lot of us forget. And so you're right. It's a journey, but we need to make sure we do that evaluation of how far we have come in this process over time.
And you'll find that you're always right in the middle. It could always be more. It could always be less.
Right.
No matter where you are. So it becomes a choice as to how you judge yourself. That's that first principle. That's the positivity one that you'll get in the mini book.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Paul. So
You're
appreciated our
welcome.
time. It's been great to connect again with you and spend a little time today. And I appreciate you coming on. For those of you that have stayed all the way to the end, thank you very much. We so appreciate you coming and being a part and helping us in our conversation with the importance of connections. We have some fun episodes coming up. Please don't hesitate to look back. We've had some fun stuff in the past, some really enlightening information. And I would encourage you, to be honest with you, jump back and look at last week's if you really want to have a interesting glimpse into what my life was like around the accident that happened. So it was interesting. So thank you again, Paul, and we'll connect again soon. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.